So today I'm praying, and Lord knows I sing loud, 'cause God's grace and your love saved me after a while. Baby, I had baggage for days, tried to pray it away, but you took so much time to help me unpack.
Marcell, this is Shannon Lacey from Iconic Chronicles magazine and 89.5 FM in the Bay.
Well, most importantly, you're on time. That's gangster. You can be anything you wanted. I heard my phone beep and I said, "Oh, MG, okay."
Oh, well, thank you very much. You have deep, meaningful topics, and you take a risk in showing vulnerability, but keeping it masculine. How do you do that?
Oh, Lord. I don't want to get too religious, but I pray a lot. I pray, and I try to stay close. So I try to say to people what I'm actually saying to God.
Wow.
And yeah, because I never want man to be bigger in my heart than God is. I feel like that's when you start doing crazy stuff, and I try to be I've been around artists that a lot of writers, and I would just learn, and a lot of times I hear other writers will say, well, I'm just trying to get something for their mind, and they would say, well, what are you trying to write? I said, well, I'm hopefully writing something to reach their heart, and I think it's way harder to reach the heart than it is to just stimulate the mind and be tricky and clever, because if you reach your heart, that means you got to start with your own first. And the Singers Sting says if you're doing the music business correctly, every album should be harder to write than the last one, because it's like peeling an onion off of yourself. So everyone should be extremely much more difficult, because you got to face some things about you each time that you didn't want to see. And that means you genuinely have to be growing. And if you're not growing, then you should stop writing. And I thought, oh my Jesus. So, but not every story is my own thing. It's not my own. Sometimes the stories of other people, but to be honest with you, when I set out in the music business, I was a minister at the time. I was in the ministry 7 years, and I resigned because when I was in 7th grade, I asked my mom, I said, "Mommy, why is it that gospel music doesn't cover the gospel?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, gospel music, the Gospels in the Bible talk about, and the Quran and Arabic, they talk about racism, sex, marriage, politics, forgiveness." I said, the Gospels talk about all of that, but gospel music just says God is good. Why doesn't it cover what God is saying? And my mom looked at me and said, "Well, won't you do it?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she let me write my first song called Ken Money, and I sung it at church. And everybody looked at me and said, "What the heck is this boy doing?" And so when I would perform live, the religious people would say, "What the heck is that, secular?" And the secular cast would say, "What the heck is that, gospel?" So no one knew what it was. So a promoter said, "Man, you got to pick a style." And one of the promoters said, "I'm going to just call you a soul artist. Are you singing from the soul?" And that, so I had to pick a genre, and I just became a soul singer. But that, in essence, was the beginning of my career. And so I would take a lot of scriptures and life experiences and rewrite them as stories for people's everyday life. But that was really, because, people would come to me and say, "Well, I feel like you're not doing God's music." And I would say, "What are you talking about?" And they would say, "Well, you need to be doing gospel." I get that all the time. And I said, "Well, gospel is 82 years old. Thomas Dorsey, when he started writing gospel, he only sold 3 albums in 3 years, because he would take hymns and put jazz, funky grooves on them, and the church kicked him out." And I said, and on the weekends, on the beginning of the weekend, he was at strip clubs. I said, so this is the guy who created quote-unquote gospel music. So, and I was like, and that form of music is only 82 years old. I think God is a whole lot older than 82.
Ooh.
So gospel music is not God's music. Music is God's music. And I say, if it's benefiting people, if it's restoring people's lives and helping them, that's God's music. If it's tearing people down and it's hurting the family fiber in the community, that's not God's music. So it's not about is gospel God's music. That's that's very dangerous to say is gospel, God's music, because God is older than 82. You know?
What kind of discipline have you had to utilize to hone your craft and stay focused?
I practice about 30 to 70 hours a month. Mostly it's around sexuality. I feel that I had to create a lot of boundaries and perimeters around sex. You know, I would tell my band, hey man, nobody's sleeping with anybody in the band. It taints the music. It affects the music. So you want to see somebody date somebody outside of the band. And then I would tell everybody, nobody's banging and dating men and women in the audience. You can if you want to, but I'm not. Because you shouldn't smoke your own product. These people are coming to hear a show. If you sleep with everybody in the audience, you're going to sleep with all the people that's trying to build you and edify you. So don't be messy. Don't take advantage of people. They're coming to see God's gift in you. You think they're coming to see you, but they're not. They're coming to see God's gift in you. And if you make it about you, you're going to be in the way. You're going to affect your own sales. And you're going to affect the industry. You're going to affect all of our success. So I try to, and people can do what they want, you know, right? Have I had them band members that sleep around the crowd? Yeah. Have I done that before? Yeah. But in 13 years, I worked very hard. I can probably count on one hand how many times I even put myself in that position ever. And I worked sexually, you know, and as some people may say, well, why are we bringing that up? But I feel like it takes an extreme amount of discipline to not include that in your craft, to really realize that, you know, you must be a servant to the people. But I practice a lot. I've written about 700 songs. I've done over 1,000 performances. So, you know, I take that very, you know, practicing. You know, my dad said to me once, he was a band leader. I grew up in the band, and my mom was the front singer. And my father would train us when we were little, and he would knock down the microphone while we were singing. He would mess with the sound. And when we would look over, he said, what are you doing? We were like, what do you mean? He said, stay focused, keep performing, keep serving. And he would say, you know, you guys, the young talent today, he would say, when I look at the young talent, he says, you guys practice in your rehearsals, and you rehearse at your performances, and wonder why nobody want to pay to see you no more. He said, you're supposed to practice you're supposed to practice when you practice, and you're supposed to rehearse what you practice on your own, and you're supposed to perform what you rehearse. He said, but nowadays, y'all performances are nothing more than a glorified rehearsal. And he told me never be that way. He says, people got to wait in a long line, share these nasty bathrooms, get somebody to watch their child. And he said, I want you to beat every other artist that's going to share the stage with you that night. And I want you to set a standard that when these people spend $20 and $10 to support you, you want them to leave the building feeling guilty. Like, man, I got way more than I paid for. Opposed to, oh, that's the last time I'm coming outside. I don't care if it was $10 or $15. And so I take that personal. I tell independent artists, don't share the stage with me. It's nothing personal. We're competing for people's time. We're competing for their energy, for their support. I show love to everyone, but I also feel that business right now for black music is not competitive enough. I feel like people are just putting out the first 10 songs that they write. I actually write 3 times more than the public actually hears, so I can make sure I'm giving the public my best. So we meet as a band like they did in Motown, and we judge the songs. So those are some of the things I do to try to give people the most sincere parts. And I hope that answered your question. I don't know if that really answered what you asked me.
You answered the question very thoroughly. You answered the question and made it clear what has to be done. And you also answered the question in a manner of what is often told to artists but is not applied. And what will set the standard of the game higher, especially in this digital age.
Yeah.
That's what's up. And I think it's cool that you went with thought-provoking lyrics and really looked within yourself instead of just being utilized as a sensual voice, putting out some tunes that could move some units. And it's been successful for you.
Yeah, it has given me some success. it's been many times I've been discouraged because I haven't had the success that I quote unquote wanted. But I'm learning that what you want is not necessarily what's best for the craft. Because when I set out to do this, I really set out. Most people don't know, to be truthfully honest with you, Shannon. I make music for men. There's a passage in the Bible where there was a guy named Nehemiah in the Old Testament, where the people of God had really lost their way. They were trying to fit in with everybody else. They were just doing a lot of crazy stuff. And he said, I want the women and children to go home first. And I thought, what is he doing? He said, I want the men to come in here. And I want the men to worship. I want the men to be crying out. I want the men praying. And if the men are right, then our women and children will be fine. And I thought, man, and when I was looking around at the churches, they were 80-90% women. When I looked at the colleges, they were 80-90% women growing and developing. And I realized through the media, they are destroying the men.
Yes.
So when I started writing my music, I started writing music to speak to and for the men. And I said, if I reach the heart of the men, the women will be more comforted, the children will be more encouraged, and hopefully everybody will benefit. And that's the truth. When I go into writing, a lot of what I think about is the hearts of the men.
Wow. So what information would you give the new artists that aren't yet ready to share the stage with you but want to prep and they don't, a lot of people do it for the money, some people do it for attention. Either way, they're coming in as a new artist. What advice do you have for them?
Work on the process, not for the results. Practice. Focus on the process. That's the advice I would give them, not the results. The results, most of the results out there are misleading and they're not real. A lot of folks that look like they have money, they owe it to the label, houses they have, the cars they have, none of it belongs to them. So if you get consumed with the result, you don't become the artist that you can become. Good artists do what they told. The legends do what they truly believe. And if you just want to make money, I tell people, if you just want to make money, then do whatever you're told. That's fine. But if you really want to make great music, sit somewhere in a quiet place and write what... And a lot of young artists I tell, don't write what you think we need to hear, because we already have a God. We don't need you to be our God. Write what you are wrestling with. Write what you are trying to make sense of. And that will bless us more than you trying to play God for us. We don't, and I tell young writers that if you want to write what you're going through. And you'll be amazed on how much it touches lives than if you write, if you're trying to play God for us. That's what I would tell them.
That's what's up. And keeping your band tight. Aside musically.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Oh, you touched the nerve with that. We rehearsed 30 to 70 hours easily a month. Sometimes we'll play the same song for an hour. Just not because we don't, quote unquote, know that we don't have the talent to know the song, but we're trying to work on a synergy. At this point, my unit has been with me for 10 years. Okay. But we don't even look at each other on stage anymore. But I've gone through 73 musicians my first 3 years.
Wow.
Because the young talent just wanted to be slick, show up practice late, not take it serious, not take the music serious. And I tell them, hey man, that shows in every note that you play. People know. They know. And but when my band would show up on stage, what we would constantly win most of our awards from is they said those guys were flawless. And they would say, oh, your band is so talented. I say, no, none of the guys in my band can read music. I can't either. We practice. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think cats definitely have to take their craft serious. Yeah.
And how do you take yourself out of the limelight, the selfishness, to just be a clear vessel? Because you do, it sounds to me, in just my experience with you thus far, that you're doing a lot more daily walk and practice versus talking and knowing passages. So how do you just take so much of yourself out and deliver life as you do?
I think when you write this song and when you write it and you talk about your wrestle with God, when you writing you're trying to make sense on how you're trying to love and you can't figure it out, on the way you were brought up, and you realizing the way I learned marriage is not what marriage is. It's just the way I learned marriage, or the way I learned to love. And you tell us that your struggle, then you easily get out of the way. But when you start lying and you start making absolutes, or this is marriage and this is this, and I have the answer for you, I think that's when you get in the way. When you start thinking again that you are the direction for us. You develop a God complex, and then God can't use you to speak to us. God can't use your weaknesses to bless us to become our strength. And I think the biggest thing is writers are afraid to talk about their weaknesses. When you hear rap, almost everybody talks about their strength. Lying. So you have no weaknesses. You on your 5th marriage, and you don't want to tell us nothing about why you're struggling with that. No, women just ain't no women faithful nowadays. Oh, really? So you don't have abandonment issues, and you don't have, So I just think the way to get out of the way is to talk about your struggle while you're in the way.
That's what's up. It's been a joy and a pleasure talking with you. It's early afternoon out here. I'm really inspired. I'm re-fired up. And many blessings on your journey. And I hope when you come out to the California Bay Area, we got to link up.
Yeah, well, you're going to help bring me out there.
You know what? It's already done.
That's what's up.
And I also want to send a shout out to your video director.
Cheston.
Yes. Very talented.
Yes. He's become a great friend. He was grinding on his own in town by himself. And I remember seeing him work for so many people for so little. And when I met him, he was just pretty much doing hip-hop. And so I said, man, I'm going to write these videos. I'm going to write this stuff. I'm going to write the treatment. I'm going to write everything I want. And all I want you to do is press play on your camera. And I'm out directing it. And I'm going to show you, kind of my vision. And I thought he would say, hey, man, kick rocks. I'm not interested. Or your stuff is too deep or it's whack. He said, cool. And I said, well, taking shots of R&B is different than hip-hop. And he's like, cool, bro. Let's work together and learn. And I said, my only interest is that the value you deserve over the next 12 months is that people in this area see your value. Because he's done, outside of being a camera guy, he's one of the most benevolent cats you'll ever meet in your life. He's taking cats in his home when they had nowhere to go. I mean, I've just seen him in this time serve the community. And I said, this should be praised more than even your camera work. So I don't want to get all deep and extra religious, but Keston is a great dude. And now he's starting to do videos for people on actual signed labels. And I told him, take over, bro. You deserve it.
Yes, he does. Big up to Keston. And big up to you, man. So we're going to be talking to you. I'm going to put you in rotation on 89.5 FM on Thursday and introduce the music to all of my listeners via that way, and definitely share it with the other DJs in my community.